evidence this to be the case. Immense difficulties have always been acknowledged in many of Daniel's prophecies, and they have been as words shot up even from believers in general. In these latter ages many have bestowed great pains, in searching into history, to illustrate those parts of these prophecies which are already accomplished, and by comparing them with other scriptures, to form some judgment of what yet remains to be fulfilled. And thus much light has been thrown on them. As they shall gradually be more and more accomplished, they will be better understood, and future generations will be far more surprised and instructed by them, than we are. Scott's Explanatory Notes, 1832. The lack of understanding concerning Daniel's prophecies in the early part of the 19th century indicated that this foretold time of the end was yet future, since those having insight, God's true servants, were to understand the prophecy in the time of the end. Dar 12. 9, 10. The expression time of the end is also used in association with particular developments in connection with human government. Daniel 11. 40 reads, "In the time of the end the king of the south will engage with the king of the north in a pushing, and against him the king of the north will storm with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships." Thereafter the prophecy discusses the actions of the king of the north and indicates that he will come to his end. Dar 11. 41-45. Thus the time of the enterotextoi acute miritra longo, Timna 1104 time indefinite, or forever. PS 104. 5. Since the earth will continue to exist, it necessarily follows that time, as an earthly dimensional measurement, will not cease. While it is true that Revelation 10. The 6th of May be rendered there should be time no longer, the context indicates that this means no further grant of time. Thus, a specific or allotted period of time terminates. KJ other translations, therefore, read, "There should be no more delay." At RS there will be no delay any longer. NW commenting on this text, A.T. Robertson observes, "This does not mean that chronos time will cease to exist, but only that there will be no more delay in the fulfillment of the 7th trumpet." Verse 7, in answer to the question, how long? 6. 10. Word Pictures in the New Testament, 1933, Volume 6, p. 372. Timnah. 1. Concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz and mother of Amalek. GE 36. 10-12 in the genealogy at 1 Chronicles 1. 36, there are first enumerated 5 sons of Esau's son Eliphaz. Next are added, Timnah and Amalek. Professor C.F. Keel remarks on this. The addition of the 2 names Timnah and Amalek in the chronicle thus appears to be merely an abbreviation, which the author might well allow himself, as the posterity of Esau were known to his readers from Genesis. The name Timnah, too, by its form of feminine formation, must have guarded against the idea of some modern exegetes that Timnah was also a son of Eliphaz. Commentary on the Old Testament, 1973, Volume 3, 1 Chronicles, p. 53. Thus, Eliphaz's 6 sons were listed, but with the notation that one of them, Amalek, was of Eliphaz's concubine, Timnah. It must be remembered that Amalek became a nation that hated God's people and concerning whom Jehovah said, "Jehovah will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." Acts 17. 8-16. Thus the accounts, both in Genesis and in Chronicles, give this detail concerning the origin of Amalek. This Timnah is possibly the same as No. 2. A daughter of Seir the Horite, therefore sister of Lotan and Seir's other sons. GE 36. 20-22. 1ch1. 39 possibly identical with number 1. 3. The first name found in the list of 11 sheikhs of Esau, or Edom. GE 36. 40-43. 1ch1. 51-54 In the view of many translators, Timnah and the other names listed are personal names. As KJ, JB, NW, RS. However, it is generally acknowledged that the expression according to their families, according to their places, by their names indicates that a tribe or an area is meant. Some versions therefore prefer expressions such as the chief of Timnah. JP, In fact, at Genesis 36:41, in the same list, a woman's name, Oholibamah, appears, allowing for the name Timnah to be that of a woman. Eusebius and Jerome identified Timnah with an Edomite site called Thamnah, which stood in their day. 1 Masnicon, 96, 24-27. However, the location of any such region named for Timnah is currently unknown. Timnah. 1. A location at the boundary of Judah and Dan. Jos 15. 1, 10. 19. 40-43. Some have identified it with a place preserving some similarity to the ancient name, Tibnah, about 6 kilometers 3.5 mi of Beth Shemesh, but no archaeological remains earlier than Roman times have been found on the site. Many favor Tel El-Batash, about 7 kilometers 4.5 mi NW of Beth Shemesh, situated on the S-bank of the torrent valley of Sorek. Samson selected a Philistine woman of Timnah for marriage when looking for an opportunity against the Philistines, who then ruled over Israel. En route to the city, he killed a lion bare-handed at the vineyards of Timnah. JG 14. 1-6. In the time of King Ahaz, the Philistines captured Timnah and its dependent towns. 2 Ch 28. 16-19. 2. A city in the mountainous region of Judah. Scholars identify this Timnah with Kbatatabana Horvat Tibnah, about 3 kilometers 2 mi NW of Gibeah el-Jabba. Jos 15. 20, 48, 57. Apparently, near this Timnah, Judah planned to shear Otex to Akut Miritra Longo. Timothy 11:05. Jan, but Tibnah overlooks the coastal plain. Mount Gash, S of Timnath Sira Timnath. Jos 24. 30. JG 2. 9. Cannot now be located definitely. Timnite of belonging to Timnah. A person of Timnah. In its only occurrence the term is applied to Samson's father-in-law. JG 15. 6. Time and Timonte, from a root meaning honor. One of the 7 men full of spirit and wisdom appointed by the apostles to care for the daily distribution in the infant Christian congregation. In spite of his Greek name, he was likely a Jew by birth. Acts 6. 1-6. Timothy Thy one who honors God. Son of a Jewess, Eunice, and a Greek father not named in the scriptures. While very young, Timothy was taught the holy writings by his mother and probably also by his grandmother Lois. Acts 16. 1. 2-1. 5. 3. 15. It is not known precisely when Timothy embraced Christianity. However, perhaps late in 49 or early in 50 CE, when the Apostle Paul arrived at Lystra, apparently Timothy's home in the course of his second missionary journey, the disciple Timothy, perhaps in his late teens or early 20s, was well reported on by the brothers in Lystra and Iconium. Acts 16. 2. It may have been at this time that, as a result of the operation of God's Spirit, certain prophecies or predictions were voiced concerning Timothy. After the Holy Spirit had in this way indicated the future of Timothy, the older men of the congregation joined the Apostle Paul in laying their hands upon Timothy, thereby setting him apart for a particular service in connection with the Christian congregation. 1-1. 18. 4. 14. 2-1. 6. Compare 13. 3. Paul chose Timothy as a traveling companion and, to avoid giving Jews an occasion for stumbling, circumcised him. Acts 16. 3. Travels with Paul. With Paul, Timothy shared in Christian activities in Philippi, Thessalonica, and Berea. Acts 16. 11. 17. 10. When opposition that was stirred up by fanatical Jews made it necessary for Paul to depart from Berea, the apostle left Silas and Timothy behind to care for the new group of believers there. Acts 17. 13-15. It appears that Paul thereafter sent word to Berea, advising Timothy to visit the brothers at Thessalonica, encouraging them to remain faithful despite tribulation. 1-3. 1-3. See Athens. Paul's activity in Athens. Apparently rejoining Paul at Corinth, Timothy brought good news about the faithfulness and love of the Thessalonian Christians. Acts 18. 5. 1-3. 6. In the letter Paul then sent to the Thessalonians, he included the names of Silvanus, Silas and Timothy in the salutation, as he also did in his second letter to them. 1th 1. 2th 1. During Paul's third missionary journey c. 52-56 CE, Timothy again traveled with the apostle. Compare 20. 4. While at Ephesus 1 Co 16. 8. Paul, in his first letter to the Corinthians, wrote, I am sending Timothy to you, as he is my beloved and faithful child in the Lord. And he will put you in mind of my methods in connection with Christ Jesus, just as I am teaching everywhere in every congregation. 1 Co 4. 17. Toward the close of this letter, though, Paul implied that Timothy might not get to Corinth. If Timothy arrives, see that he becomes free of fear among you, for he is performing the work of Jehovah, even as I am. 1 Co 16. 10. If Timothy did indeed visit Corinth, this must have been before he and Erastus left Ephesus for Macedonia, since Timothy and Paul were together in Macedonia when the second letter to the Corinthians based on the report of Titus, not of Timothy, was written. Act 19. 22. 2 Co 1. 1. 2. 13. 7. 5-7. Perhaps Timothy's intended visit did not materialize. This is suggested by the fact that, in his second letter to the Corinthians, Paul makes no mention of Timothy's being there other than in association with himself. 2 Co 1. 19. Later, at the time Paul wrote to the Romans, apparently from Corinth, the home of Gaius, Timothy was o textoi acute muritra longo, Timothy, letters to 1106 furtherance of the good news. php 2. 20-22. And to Timothy he wrote, I never leave off remembering you in my supplications, night and day longing to see you, as I remember your tears, that I may get filled with joy. For I recollect the faith which is in you without any hypocrisy. 2t1. 3-5. Although having to contend with frequent illness, because of stomach trouble 1t5. 23. Timothy willingly expended himself in behalf of others. His fine qualities endeared him to the Apostle Paul, who very much desired Timothy's association when facing imminent death. 2t4. 6-9. Being relatively young, Timothy may have been diffident and hesitant about asserting his authority. Compare 1t4. 11-14. 2t1. 6, 7. 2. 1. This shows that Timothy was not a proud man, but appreciated his limitations. Timothy, letters 2. 2 inspired letters of the Christian Greek scriptures addressed to Timothy by the Apostle Paul, who identifies himself as the writer in the opening words of each letter. 1t1. 1. 2t1. 1. The first letter was evidently written from Macedonia. A basis for assigning an approximate date for the composition of this letter is found in the first chapter, verse 3, which reads, Just as I encouraged you to stay in Ephesus, when I was about to go my way into Macedonia, so I do now. There is no mention of this in the book of Acts, which covers a period from the time of Jesus' ascension to heaven in 33 CE until the second year of Paul's imprisonment in Rome, about 61 CE. Accordingly, it seems that it was some time after his being released that Paul encouraged Timothy to stay in Ephesus, and then Paul apparently departed for Macedonia. This would place the time for the writing of 1 Timothy between the date of the apostle's release from his first imprisonment at Rome and his final imprisonment there, or about 61-64 CE. The second letter was composed at Rome during Paul's final imprisonment, likely c. 65 CE, and not long before his death. 2t1. 8, 17. 4. 6-9. Authenticity. The authenticity of 1st and 2nd Timothy is well established. All outstanding ancient catalogues, starting with the Muratorian fragment of the 2nd century CE, list both letters as canonical. Most important, these letters are in complete agreement with the rest of the scriptures and quote from them. They contain quotations from or allusions to Numbers 16. 5. 2t2. 19, Deuteronomy 19. 15. 25. 4. 1t5. 18, 19, Isaiah 26. 13. 2 19, and the words of Jesus Christ Mount 10. 10. Luke 10. 7. 1-5. 18. Noteworthy of the frequent references to faith 1-1. 2, 4, 5, 14, 19. 2. 7, 15. 3. 9, 13. 4. 1, 6, 12. 5. 8, 12. 6. 10-12, 21. 2-1. 5, 13. 2. 18, 22. 3. 8, 10, 15. 4. 7, as well as the emphasis on right doctrine 1-1. 3, 4. 4. 1-3, 6, 7. 6. 3, 4, 20, 21. 2-1. 13. 3. 14, 15. 4. 3, 5, conduct 1-2. 8-11, 15. 3. 2-13. 4. 12. 5. 1-21. 6. 1, 2, 11-14. 2-2. 22, pro 1-2. 1, 2, 8. 4. 5. 5. 5. 2-1. 3, and faithful endurance through suffering 2-1. 8, 12. 2. 3, 8-13. Background for 1 Timothy. In about 56 CE, when meeting at Miletus with the older men of the Ephesus congregation, the Apostle Paul said to them, I know that after my going away oppressive wolves will enter in among you and will not treat the flock with tenderness, and from among you yourselves men will rise and speak twisted things to draw away the disciples after themselves. Act 20. 29, 30. Within a few years the situation regarding the teaching of false doctrines did become so serious that Paul encouraged Timothy to stay in Ephesus, that he might command certain ones not to teach different doctrine, nor to pay attention to false stories and to genealogies. 1-1. 3, 4 Timothy, therefore, had to wage spiritual warfare inside the Christian congregation to preserve its purity and to help its members to remain in the faith. 1. 18, 19. His applying the things mentioned in the Apostles' letter would owe text to acute mirita longo, Timothy, letters to 1107 faith, in chasteness, and also had to be concerned about continuing to make advancement. 4. 12, 15, 16. 6. 11-14. Background for 2 Timothy. In 64 CE a great fire ravaged Rome, destroying about a fourth of the city. Rumor had it that Caesar Nero was responsible for it. To protect himself, Nero placed the blame upon the Christians. This appears to have prompted a wave of violent governmental persecution. It was likely about this time c. 65 CE that the Apostle Paul was again imprisoned at Rome. Though forsaken by many, suffering in chains, and facing imminent death 2-1. 15, 16. 4. 6-8, the Apostle wrote an encouraging letter to Timothy, one that prepared his younger fellow worker to resist apostate elements inside the congregation and to stand firm in the face of persecution. 2. 3-7, 14-26. 3. 14. 4. 5. By learning about Paul's circumstances, Timothy would have been able to draw encouragement from the Apostle's good example of faithful endurance under great tribulation. 2. 8-13. Fearless in the strength of Jehovah, Paul exhorted Timothy. Stir up like a fire the gift of God which is in you through the laying of my hands upon you. For God gave us not a spirit of cowardice, but that of power and of love and of soundness of mind. Therefore do not become ashamed of the witness about our Lord, neither of me a prisoner for his sake, but take your part in suffering evil for counsel to a Christian elder regarding his responsibilities, written by the Apostle Paul evidently sometime after his release from his first imprisonment in Rome. Counsel for Timothy's own spiritual well-being. Wage spiritual warfare, maintaining faith and a good conscience. 1. 18, 19. Your concern should be, not with bodily training, but with godly devotion. Do not let others look down on your youth, but rather be a good example and make advancement for. 7b-16. Do not appoint someone hastily to a position, so as to avoid being a sharer in sins of others. 5. 22. Warnings against corrupting influences in the congregation. Command certain ones not to teach different doctrines, nor to pay attention to false stories and genealogies. 1. 3. For certain ones have deviated from love and done hypocritical faith. They want to be teachers of law but lack understanding of its intent. 1. 5-11. In later periods of time there will be a falling away from the faith. 4. 1-5. Counteract wrong influences. Be nourished with words of faith. Reject false stories. 4. 6, 7. False teaching breeds envy, strife, abusive speeches, suspicions, violent disputes, and the use of what is godly for selfish gain. 6. 3-5. Flee from bad fruitage resulting from love of money. Fight the fine fight of the faith and resist false doctrine. 6. 11, 12, 20, 21. Qualifications for those appointed to serve as overseers and ministerial servants. Overseers' qualifications include his being irreprehensible, having only one wife, being sound in mind, orderly, hospitable, qualified to teach, self-controlled as to drink and temper, reasonable, not loving money, presiding well over his household, not being a new convert, and having a good reputation outside the congregation. 3. 1-7. Ministerial servants must be serious, not double-tongued, not heavy drinkers, nor greedy of dishonest gain, first tested as to fitness, free from accusation, presiding well over their households. 3. 8-10, 12, 13. Instructions regarding various congregation needs. Prayers should be offered for all sorts of men, including rulers, to the end that Christians may live peaceably with godly devotion. It is God's will that all sorts of men should be saved too. 1-4. There is only one God and one mediator, Jesus Christ, so men offering prayers should lift up loyal hands, apart from wrath and debates. 2. 5-8. Women should dress in a modest, becoming manner, reflecting reverence. O textoi acute miritra longo. 10-11. Await the good news according to the power of God. 2-1. 6-8. 10. A faintly bluish white metal that is very malleable. Of the 6 products of the ancient metallurgist's furnace, tin had the lowest melting point of all, only 232 degrees C, 449 degrees F. S22. 18, 20. The original Hebrew word bedil means that which is separated or divided, that is, from precious metals by smelting. It is also translated waste products. Issa 1. 25. There were no tin mines in Palestine. The first reference to tin, soon after the Exodus, includes it among the valuable spoils of war taken from the Midianites. New 31. 2, 22. The Tyrians obtained tin from Tarshish. As 27. 12. Much of the heavy dark oxide of tin called cassiterite came from river sands in Spain and England. Tin, it appears, was used to make plummets, for at Zechariah 4. 10, which speaks of the plummet. The Masoretic text reads, the stone or, weight, the tin. In Amos 7. 7, 8. The Hebrew word translated plummet may mean tin or lead. Tin's greatest usefulness, however, was as a hardening agent. Copper alloyed with 2 to 18% tin has been found in ancient specimens of bronze. Tipsa. 1. A place at the extreme end of Solomon's kingdom. 1 Kai 4. 24. Some tentatively identify it with Dibsa on the Euphrates River, about 90 kilometers 56 meters of Aleppo, and about the same distance from the confluence of the Euphrates and Balik rivers. 2. A place, apparently in the vicinity of Tiza, that was struck down by Israel's king Menahem c. 790-781 BCE. 2 Kai 15. 16. Its exact location is not known. Betafsa, about 10 kilometers 6 MWSW of ancient Shechem, bears a similar name, but appears to be too far from the assumed site of Tiza to be the location of this Tipsa. Tyras Tiras. One of the 7 sons of Japheth. GE 10. 2. 1 ch 1. 5. The people who descended from Japheth's sons were later spread about in their lands, each according to its tongue. GE 10. 5. Generally, scholars of the present day consider Tyras to be identified with the Tyre Noi of classical Greek writers, also called Tyre Rhe The Tis Noi were a seafaring people of the islands and coastlands of the Aegean Sea. Encouragement and counsel to help Timothy remain firm in the difficult times ahead. The last inspired letter written by Paul, during his second imprisonment in Rome. Encouragement for Timothy to keep making progress. Stir up like a fire the gift of God that you received. Do not be ashamed of the witness about Christ or of Paul as a prisoner. Take your part in suffering for the good news. 1. 6-8 Guard the pattern of healthful words. 1. 13, 14 Like a soldier, be single-minded. Like an athlete in the games, contend according to the rules. Be like the hard-working farmer. Endure faithfully. 2. 3-13 Do your utmost to present yourself approved to God, handling the word of truth aright. 2. 15 Flee from desires of youth, but pursue godly qualities in company with those who call on the Lord out of a clean heart. 2. 22 Counsel to help Timothy stand firm against false teachers. Avoid fights about words and talk that violates what is holy. With mildness, try to recover those ensnared by the devil. 2. 14, 16-26 In the last days there will be critical times hard to deal with because of the wicked attitudes of people. They will be lovers of money and of pleasures rather than lovers of God. Shun such people. 3. 1. 7 These corrupted men will go on resisting the truth. But stick to what you have accepted as true, because you learned it from people you knew well and from the inspired scriptures. 3. 8-17 Persevere in preaching the word, evangelizing, fully accomplishing your ministry. Even though times are coming when men will not want to listen to healthful doctrine, but will prefer having their ears tickled by teachers of their own choosing. 4. 1-5 Paul's circumstances as a prisoner. O textoi acute muritra longo, tithe 1109 Tyratites Tirath middle.ites. A Kennet family of scribes living at Jabez. 1 ch 2. 55. Tyhaka Termiddle.Haka. Usually identified as Pharaoh Dahaka, although the dates generally assigned by modern historians to Dahaka's rule do not fit biblical chronology. For evidence favoring biblical chronology over the secular, see chronology, Bible chronology and secular history. During Hezekiah's reign, while Assyrian king Sennacherib was fighting against Libnah, news came that Tyhaka, the Ethiopian king of Egypt, was on his way to fight the Assyrians. 2K 19. 8, 9. Issa 37. 8, 9 An Assyrian inscription, though not mentioning Tyhaka, indicates that Sennacherib defeated the forces that came from Egypt and captured the charioteers of the king of Ethiopia. The next Assyrian king, Esarhaddon, boasted about his conquest of Egypt, saying, "Its king, Tyhaka, I wounded 5 times with arrows hots and ruled over his entire country." During the reign of Esarhaddon's son and successor Ashurbanipal, Tyhaka revolted against submission to Assyria. But, according to Ashurbanipal, the terror of the sacred weapon of Ashur, my lord, overcame Tyhaka where he had taken refuge and he was never heard of again. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, pages 287, 288, 290, 295. Dihanatoha Middle.Na. Child of Caleb by his concubine Maacah. Of the tribe of Judah. 1 ch 2. 3, 48. Tiriaturai Middle.A son of Jehalilel in the genealogies of Judah. 1 ch 4. 1, 16. Tushatatur Middle.Shatha. The Persian title for the governor of a jurisdictional district. In the 5 times it is used, it is preceded by the Hebrew definite article ha, making it in English the Tushata. The officials mentioned in the Bible by the title Tushata ruled over Judah, one of the Persian provinces. Zerubbabel was evidently the Tushata mentioned in Ezra 2. 63 and Nehemiah 7. 65, 70. Later when Nehemiah became governor he was the Tershata and is referred to as such at Nehemiah 8. 9 and 10. 1. Tiza Tirzah from a root meaning take pleasure. Approve. 1. One of the 5 daughters of the Manasseh Zelophehad. A contemporary of Moses and Joshua. New 26. 29, 33. 27. 1-7. 36. 11, 12. Joes 17. 3, 4. 2. A city in Samaria. Archaeological evidence seems to favor identifying it with Tel El-Fa'ar, about 10 kilometers 6 mi of Shechem. Under the command of Joshua, the Israelites defeated the king of Tirzah. Joes 12. 7, 24 centuries later, Jeroboam, the first king of the northern kingdom, transferred his residence to Tirzah. Compare 1 Kai 12. 25. 14. 17. Tirzah evidently continued to be the capital of the northern kingdom during the reigns of Jeroboam's son Nadab 1 Kai 15. 25-28 and his successors Baasha, Elah, and Zimri. 1 Kai 15. 33. 16. 5, 6, 8, 15 The last of these kings, Zimri, committed suicide at Tirzah when Omri captured the city. 1 Kai 16. 17-20 After reigning in Tirzah for 6 years, Omri built Samaria and made that city his capital. 1 Kai 16. 23, 24, 29 More than 150 years later, Menahem, a resident of Tirzah, killed Shalom and became king in Samaria. 2 Kai 15. 14, 17. Tishbite. Evidently an inhabitant of Tishbe, apparently a village of the Jordan, in the land of Gilead. The term Tishbite is applied to Elijah in each of its 6 occurrences. 1 Kai 17. 1. 21. 17, 28. 2 Kai 1. 3, 8. 9. 36. Tishri. Seathanim. Tithe. A 10th part, or 10%, given or paid as a tribute, especially for religious purposes. The Bible tells of 2 instances prior to the setting up of the law covenant in which a 10th part of possessions was paid to God or to his representative. The first of these was on the occasion when Abraham gave Melchizedek 1/10 of the spoils of his victory over Chedorlaomer and his allies. GE 14. 18-20 The Apostle Paul cites this incident as proof that Christ's priesthood according to the manner of Melchizedek is superior to that of Levi, since Levi, being o textoi acute miritra longo, tithe 11/10 tithe was paid, since no income was anticipated. 25. 1-12 However, some scholars believe there was only 1 tithe. Such tithes were in addition to the first fruits they were under obligation to offer to Jehovah. Acts 23. 19. 34. 26. The first tithe, consisting of 1/10 of the produce of the land and fruit trees, and evidently of the increase of the herds and flocks, was brought to the sanctuary and given to the Levites, since they had no inheritance in the land, but were devoted to the service of the sanctuary. 27. 30-32. New 18. 21, 24 The Levites, in turn, gave 1/10 of what they received to the Aaronic priesthood for their support. New 18. 25-29. Evidently the grain was threshed and the fruit of the vine and of the olive tree was converted into wine and oil before tithing. New 18. 27, 30. NE 10. 37 If an Israelite wished to give money instead of this produce, he could do so, provided he added an additional 1/5 to the valuation. 27. 31 But it was different with the flock and the herd. As the animals came out of the pen one by one through a gate, the owner stood by the gate with a rod and marked every 10th one as the tithe, without examination or selection. 27. 32, 33. It seems there was an additional tithe, a second 10th, set aside each year for purposes other than the direct support of the Levitical priesthood, though the Levites shared in it. Normally it was used and enjoyed in large measure by the Israelite family when assembling together at the national festivals. In cases where the distance to Jerusalem was too great for the convenient transport of this tithe, then the produce was converted into money, and this, in turn, was used in Jerusalem for the household sustenance and enjoyment during the Holy Convention there. The 12. 4-7, 11, 17, 18, 14. 22-27 Then, at the end of every third and sixth years of the 7-year sabbatical cycle, this tithe, instead of being used to defray expenses at the national assemblies, was set aside for the Levites, alien residents, widows, and fatherless boys in the local community. The 14. 28, 29, 26, 12. These tithing laws binding on Israel were not excessive. Nor should it be overlooked that God promised to prosper Israel by opening the floodgates of the heavens if his tithing laws were obeyed. Mal 3. 10. 28. 1, 2, 11-14 When the people became negligent as to tithing, the priesthood suffered, for the priests and Levites were forced to spend their time in secular work and consequently neglected their ministerial services. Ne 13. 10 Such unfaithfulness tended to bring about a decline in true worship. Sadly, when the 10 tribes fell away to calf worship, they used the tithe to support that false religion. Am 4. 5 On the other hand, when Israel was faithful to Jehovah and was under the rule of righteous administrators, tithing for the Levites was restored, and true to Jehovah's promise, there were no shortages. 2 Ch 31. 4-12. Ne 10. 37, 38. 12. 44. 13. 11-13. Under the law there was no stated penalty to be applied to a person failing to tithe. Jehovah placed all under a strong moral obligation to provide the tithe. At the end of the 3-year tithing cycle, they were required to confess before him that the tithe had been paid in full. The 26. 12-15 Anything wrongfully withheld was viewed as something stolen from God. Mal 3. 7-9. By the 1st century CE the Jewish religious leaders, particularly among the scribes and Pharisees, were making a sanctimonious show of tithing and other outward works, in a form of worship, but their hearts were far removed from God. Mount 15. 1-9 Jesus reproved them for their selfish, hypocritical attitude, calling attention to their being meticulous to give a tenth even of the mint and the dill and the cumin. Something they should have done. Yet at the same time disregarding the weightier matters of the law, namely, justice and mercy and faithfulness. O textui acute miritra longo, Titus 11:11 Tribute according to what a person has, giving as he has resolved in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. 2 Co 8. 12. 9. 7 They were encouraged to follow the principle. Let the older men who preside in a fine way be reckoned worthy of double honor, especially those who work hard in speaking and teaching. For the scripture says, you must not muzzle a bull when it threshes out the grain. Also, the workman is worthy of his wages. 1 Tim 5. 17, 18 However, the Apostle Paul set an example in seeking to avoid bringing an undue financial burden on the congregation. Acts 18. 3. 1 Th 2. 9. Titius Justus. See Justus No. 2. Titus Titus. A Greek Christian who labored with the Apostle Paul. At the time the circumcision issue arose at Antioch c. 49 CE it appears that Titus accompanied Paul and Barnabas to Jerusalem. Acts 15. 1, 2. 2. 1-3 About 55 CE Titus ministered unselfishly to the Corinthian congregation, having been sent to Corinth by the Apostle Paul to assist in the collection for the needy brothers in Judea, and perhaps also to note the reaction of the congregation to Paul's first letter to them. 2 Co 2. 13. 8. 1-6. 12. 17, 18 When Titus thereafter met the apostle in Macedonia, he was able to give a good report about the Corinthian congregation, one that brought comfort and joy to Paul. Titus himself had developed great affection for the Corinthian Christians, because of their obedience, and because their commendable attitude had proved to be a source of encouragement and joy to him. 2 Co 7. 6, 7, 13-15. Since Titus had initiated matters in connection with the contribution, Paul desired that he complete the task and commended Titus to the Corinthian congregation as a sharer with me and a fellow worker for your interests. Being sincerely interested in the welfare of the Corinthians, and encouraged by the apostle to do so, Titus willingly departed for Corinth. 2 Co 8. 6, 16, 17, 23. After Paul was released from his first imprisonment at Rome, Titus and Timothy apparently worked with him in the ministry. While in Crete evidently sometime between 61 and 64 CE, Paul left Titus there to correct the things that were defective and to make appointments of older men in city after city. Tit 1. 4, 5. It was apparently a temporary assignment, for Paul requested that Titus do his utmost to join him at Nicopolis. Tit 3. 12. Sometime during Paul's second imprisonment at Rome c. 65 CE, Titus, likely at the apostles' direction or with his approval, left for Dalmatia. 2 T4. 10. See Dalmatia. Counsel to an elder regarding the handling of situations in a most difficult assignment, written by the apostle Paul evidently after his first imprisonment in Rome. Appointment of overseers and handling of serious problems. Titus is commissioned to correct things that are defective, and to appoint overseers in various cities of Crete. 1. 5. A man who is appointed to be an overseer should be free from accusation, exemplary both in his person and in his family life, hospitable, balanced, and self-controlled. He must properly represent the truth in his teaching and thus be able to exhort and to reprove those who contradict. 1. 6-9. Unruly men in the congregations must be silenced, especially those adhering to the circumcision, who have subverted entire households. Severe reproof must be given so that all may be healthy in the faith. 1. 10-16. Foolish questionings, genealogies, and conflicts over the law must be avoided. Reject a promoter of a sect after he has been admonished twice. 3. 9-11. Healthful counsel to all kinds of Christians. Aged men are encouraged to be exemplary in moderation, seriousness, soundness of mind, faith, love, and endurance. 2. 1, 2. Aged women are likewise urged to be exemplary. They should be teachers of good, in order that they may help younger women to evoke extoi acute merita longo. Titus, Letter to 11:12. Titus, Letter 2. A letter written by the apostle Paul to Titus, a fellow worker whom Paul had left behind in Crete to correct the things that were defective and to make appointments of older men in the various congregations there. Tit 1. 1, 4, 5. The letter's authenticity is attested by all outstanding ancient catalogues of the Christian Greek scriptures, starting with the Muratorian fragment of the 2nd century CE time and place of writing. As no record exists that Paul engaged in Christian activity on the island of Crete before his first imprisonment at Rome, he must have been there with Titus sometime between his release and his final imprisonment. Thus the time for the letter's composition would be between about 61 and 64 CE. Macedonia may have been the place from which the letter was sent. It was apparently there in the same general period that Paul wrote 1 Timothy. 1:1. 3. The letter's purpose. The letter evidently was to serve as a guide for Titus and gave him apostolic backing for the performance of his duties in connection with the Cretan congregations. His assignment was not an easy one, for he had to contend with rebellious persons. As Paul wrote, "There are many unruly men, profitless talkers, and deceivers of the mind, especially those men who adhere to the circumcision. It is necessary to shut the mouths of these, as these very men keep on subverting entire households by teaching things they ought not for the sake of dishonest gain." Tit 1. 10, 11. Also, lying, gluttony, and laziness were common among the Cretans, and apparently some of the Christians reflected these bad traits. For this reason Titus had to reprove them with severity and show what was required of Christians, whether young or old, male or female, slave or free. Personally he had to be an example in fine works and show uncorruptness in teaching. 1. 12. 3. 2. Tizite. Designation of David's warrior Joah. 1 ch 11. 26, 45. The name is probably derived from a place now unknown. Dotuah. A Kohathite Levite ancestor of the prophet Samuel and Heman the singer. 1 ch 6. 33, 34, 38. He is probably called Nehath in 1 Chronicles 6. 26 and 2 at 1